Jenny's voice trembled, but her words cut sharper than any knife. She said she was leaving India, leaving Sumit, leaving everything behind. In that moment, you could see the weight of years, of sacrifices, of endless fights, finally crashing down. Sumit's knees buckled, tears streaming, his hands shaking as he tried to hold on to a love that had already slipped through his fingers. How could a decade-long love story end like this? The tension wasn't just between them. It was the pressure of a family that never fully accepted her, the weight of cultural expectations that felt impossible to fight, and the exhaustion of a woman who gave everything and got little in return. Every glance, every unspoken word, every small compromise seemed to come rushing back in that one unbearable moment. But wait, what Sumit does next will shock everyone. He's about to make a choice that no one saw coming, and it could change the course of both their lives forever. Jenny's journey to India wasn't a casual vacation. It was a leap into a completely different life, and the first few months were nothing short of brutal. Imagine packing up your entire world, your career, your friends, your family, the comfort of familiarity, and moving to a place where even saying hello can feel like decoding a secret language. That was Jenny's reality. She arrived full of hope, dreaming of love, conquering all. But the first meeting with Sumit's family quickly turned that dream into a maze of expectations and subtle rejections. At first, it was small things. A sideways glance at her clothes, the way she didn't fold her dupatta the right way, jokes that weren't really jokes, but comments that slowly piled up like invisible bricks on her chest. Every interaction became a test she couldn't win, no matter how hard she tried. She tried to fit in, tried to learn, tried to keep the peace, but the energy drain was immense. Some days she felt like she was two people, herself and the version her love story demanded. Jenny didn't just move continents. She sacrificed pieces of herself along the way. The career she loved, gone. The friends who kept her sane, distant. The freedom to breathe without scrutiny, fading fast. Every choice was filtered through the lens of someone else's culture, someone else's rules. And yet, she kept smiling, kept fighting, kept hoping Sumit would stand with her, that love would outweigh all else. From Sumit's perspective, it wasn't easy either. He loved Jenny, undeniably, but he was trapped in a whirlwind of loyalty and obligation. His family expected adherence, tradition, and approval at every step, and challenging that wasn't just frowned upon, it risked weeks of tension, endless debates, and the wrath of relatives who never learned to accept outsiders. He wanted Jenny happy, but he also wanted his family content. Balancing the two felt like trying to carry two worlds on his back at the same time. And sometimes Sumit's attempts to smooth things over were, well, let's say, a little comedic. Picture him thinking a cup of chai could solve a heated argument about dinner, or a polite nod could erase days of tension. Classic. But even humor couldn't mask the cracks forming in their relationship. Every little incident was a reminder that love alone wasn't enough to patch the deep-rooted cultural and familial expectations they both faced. The visa battles added another layer of strain. Papers, forms, appointments, every step was a reminder of the fragility of her presence in India. One small mistake could send her world crumbling again. Jenny felt constantly on edge, juggling a relationship, family expectations, and the looming threat of legal and bureaucratic hurdles. Each approved step forward felt precarious, like walking on a tightrope with no safety net. It wasn't all doom, of course. There were moments of laughter, of stolen glances, quiet evenings where they remembered why they fell in love in the first place. Jenny cooking a dish that Sumit's family hated, but he devoured anyway. Sumit nervously trying to explain his culture to her without realizing he was confusing her more. They had sparks, moments of tenderness, glimpses of what could have been a fairy tale, but those moments were fleeting, always overshadowed by the weight of expectation. As months turned into years, the compromises piled up. Jenny became increasingly aware of the emotional toll. She was exhausted. Every effort to fit in, every nod, every smile, every quiet acceptance chipped away at her sense of self. She loved Sumit. She truly did. But the cost of that love was becoming unbearable. And Sumit Watching her fade into a version of herself that didn't feel like Jenny anymore felt trapped between guilt and helplessness. Family gatherings became minefields. Every aunt and uncle seemed to have a subtle critique ready, every festival a test of assimilation. Jenny tried, oh how she tried, but the resistance was subtle yet persistent. The culture she tried to embrace sometimes felt like quicksand, pulling her deeper into anxiety and exhaustion. And no matter how Sumit tried to mediate, there was always that invisible wall, that invisible rulebook Jenny could never quite crack. And the heartbreak didn't stop there. Arguments that started over trivial things, where to eat, how to greet elders, often spiraled into nights of quiet tears, unspoken frustrations, and silent resentment. Jenny's emotional reserves were dwindling, and Sumit's attempts to fix things, though sincere, weren't enough to stop the inevitable buildup. Yet, even amid the tension, their relationship had layers of loyalty, love, and connection that were hard to ignore. Sumit genuinely admired Jenny's courage, and Jenny couldn't deny the warmth and affection that sometimes broke through the storm of cultural pressures. The push and pull of love versus obligation defined their every interaction. But cracks were forming in ways that couldn't be repaired with a smile or a cup of tea. Jenny's heart began signaling its breaking point, her patience fraying with each subtle insult, each dismissive comment, each family expectation she couldn't meet. She was exhausted, not just physically, but emotionally, psychologically, and spiritually. It wasn't just a fight with family anymore. It was a fight for her own survival in a relationship that demanded more than she could give without losing herself. And here's where it gets really messy. Jenny's next move wasn't just dramatic. It was irreversible. The morning was quiet, almost eerily so. Jenny moved through the apartment like a ghost of herself, pulling clothes from drawers, folding scarves with meticulous care, and carefully placing small souvenirs into her suitcase. Each item she touched carried weight, memories of trips, laughter, arguments, promises made under better circumstances. Her blouse from her first Diwali, Sumit's favorite scarf she once thought he hated, the little Ganesh statue from a temple visit, all packed with intention. This wasn't just packing. This was a statement. Sumit, meanwhile, sipped his morning chai, scrolling through his phone, completely unaware of the storm brewing inches away. His shoulders were relaxed, his expression calm, the kind of calm that only happens when someone assumes everything is fine. But watch closely. Notice the slight tension in his jaw when Jenny doesn't respond to his idle question about breakfast, the way his eyes flick toward her every so often, without really seeing. He misses the tiny cues, the deliberate stacking of suitcases, the way her movements are slower, more deliberate, like each action is a countdown. People often ignore these subtle signals. We assume someone will tell us when they're upset. But Jenny isn't giving him a warning. Not exactly. She's moving through the ritual of departure with quiet precision. Humans are wired to rationalize. She's tired, Sumit thinks. She's stressed. The reality is far sharper. Every fold, every placement, every small action is a heartbeat closer to the inevitable. Jenny picks up a framed photo of them from happier days. Her fingers linger on the glass, tracing the smiles frozen in time. Then, she sets it gently into the suitcase. The symbolism is deafening. She's not leaving things behind casually, she's leaving parts of herself, parts of their shared history. Sumit still doesn't see it. He glances up, offers a distracted smile, assumes everything is normal. But here's where you realize the calm is deceptive. Every step she takes toward that suitcase raises the stakes. A blouse is carefully folded. A set of postcards slips into the side pocket. Sumit asks her, almost absent-mindedly, if she wants more chai. She doesn't answer. Her silence isn't passive. It's loaded. Watch her body language. Shoulders tight, eyes focused, lips pressed together. She's moved past negotiation, past pleading, past subtle hints. Every micro-expression, every deliberate movement is a warning he's failing to read. We often ignore cues because facing them is uncomfortable. Humans excel at postponing conflict. Sumit sees her quietness and interprets it as moodiness, fatigue, stress. He doesn't see it as a final declaration. And that's why breakups like this explode. They are preceded by a series of almost invisible warnings, each more urgent than the last. Jenny has reached the point where subtlety is no longer enough. Then she turns toward him. The suitcase is half packed, and she holds it like a shield, a container of every sacrifice, every loss, every heartbreak she's endured in these years. Sumit notices her gaze. Finally, the first flicker of recognition. His brow tightens. Something is off, but he doesn't yet grasp how off. There's a pause, a beat too long, and the room seems to hold its breath. And here it hits, the first hint of panic. Sumit senses the gravity of what he's about to lose, but he has no idea how immediate it is. Jenny walks toward the door, suitcase in hand. Her steps are deliberate, each one heavier than the last. You can see the internal calculation in her eyes, how to exit gracefully, how to maintain dignity, how to survive emotionally. Sumit gets up, maybe to stop her, maybe to ask a question. His voice cracks slightly when he says her name. That small fissure in his composure hints at everything he's about to face. They reach the living room, the luggage stacked like silent witnesses. Jenny's hands linger on the handle. Sumit finally fully registers the magnitude of the moment. He fumbles for words, hesitates, then stumbles into a series of fragmented sentences. Jenny, wait, I didn't. He's piecing together a puzzle he didn't know existed. Notice how quickly the dynamic shifts. The quiet morning has transformed into an emotional minefield. Jenny doesn't respond immediately. Her eyes lock with his, calm but resolute. The pause stretches, unbearable, each second magnifying the tension. There's a psychological phenomenon here. We often delay emotional confrontations until they become unavoidable. Sumit is living that delay. Every second he hesitates, Jenny's resolve grows stronger, almost like a law of physics, emotional momentum building toward the inevitable collapse. Then she speaks. The words are measured, deliberate, heartbreaking in their simplicity. I can't do this anymore. Not angry, not yelling, just definitive. Sumit recoils slightly, as if physically struck. His mind races. Could he have prevented this? Did he see the signs? How did it come to this without warning? But the truth is, he saw them and ignored them, rationalized them away. This is where the emotional tension peaks. The audience feels it before the characters even react. Jenny lifts the suitcase. Sumit instinctively steps forward, reaching for her hand, but she gently withdraws. There's a moment, a silent negotiation, a clash of wills, the culmination of years of tension. Every subtle behavior, every ignored cue, every cultural and familial battle is now concentrated into this single instant. She moves toward the door, slow but deliberate, each step punctuated with the weight of her decision. Sumit's face shifts from confusion to shock, then to panic. The audience can almost hear his heart racing, see his thoughts scrambling for solutions, for compromises, for something, anything to reverse what's happening. And yet, the moment is unstoppable. Her hand is on the doorknob. She looks back once, the smallest nod of acknowledgement, an emotional punctuation mark that says, I tried, I loved, I lost, I must go. Sumit's knees buckle slightly, the first full visible collapse. This isn't theatrics, it's raw human devastation. And in that moment, the stakes aren't just love, not just family, not just culture. It's survival. If you think this is just a fight about family, think again. The next few minutes prove it's about survival. The air in the apartment felt thick, almost suffocating. Jenny stood near the door, suitcase in hand, every movement deliberate, each one signaling finality. Sumit's eyes were wide, disbelief written across his face. Jenny, wait. Are you serious? His voice cracked, small pieces of panic spilling out between the words. She didn't flinch. She held his gaze, calm but immovable, the weight of years of struggle behind that quiet composure. Her choice wasn't impulsive. This was survival. Sometimes love isn't enough when the environment around it corrodes everything you value. Jenny had given years of herself, left her home, her friends, her comfort behind. She endured endless cultural clashes, subtle rejections, constant battles with family expectations. Leaving wasn't weakness. It was a boundary finally enforced. Sumit's despair wasn't about betrayal. It was about watching the person he loves prioritize her well-being over his family obligations, over the life he had assumed they would build together. You think he can change her mind? You'll be surprised. Sumit stepped forward, trembling slightly, words tumbling out in a desperate rush. Please, Jenny, I can fix this. I'll talk to my parents. We can work it out. I promise. His hands reached for hers, as if touch alone could reverse months of emotional erosion. Jenny shook her head gently. Her movements were soft, but they carried the weight of inevitability. She wasn't leaving in anger. She was leaving in clarity. Her calm contrasted starkly with his rising panic. He was pleading, promising, bargaining with everything he had, everything except the courage to confront the cultural and familial forces that had pushed her to this point. The gap between them wasn't a lack of love. It was the weight of expectations he couldn't fully defy, and the exhaustion she could no longer ignore. You think words can keep her here? Watch closely. Jenny finally spoke, voice quiet but firm. I love you. I always will. But I can't live in a space where I constantly fight to be accepted. I can't keep sacrificing my peace, my happiness, my life. This is where it ends. Her words hit with the force of inevitability. They weren't dramatic for show. They were real, painful, true. Sumit's jaw tightened, his hands shaking. He tried again, softer this time, almost a whisper. I can make it right. I can change. But she had already changed. Her mind, her heart, and her decisions had moved past negotiation. She had processed every argument, every disappointment, every subtle sign of rejection. Her calm was the product of clarity, not indifference. Sumit's desperation only amplified the drama, but it couldn't erase the years of struggle, the emotional toll, the realization that some divides, cultural, familial, emotional, aren't bridged by promises alone. You think she'll waver? Look closer, she's resolute. Sumit reached out again, touching her arm gently. The physical gesture spoke volumes, his love, his regret, his disbelief. But Jenny didn't recoil angrily. She simply slid her hand from his grasp, a quiet, deliberate withdrawal. Every inch she gained from him emotionally mirrored the suitcase she carried physically, a gradual, inevitable distance that couldn't be closed in this moment. Sumit's eyes glistened with tears. His voice broke entirely now. Please, don't go. Don't do this to us. To me, he fell silent for a beat, trying to collect himself to find a solution she had already decided was impossible. Watching him, you can see how the desperation of love clashes with the pragmatism of survival. It's heart-wrenching because both perspectives are valid. One anchored in hope, the other in self-preservation. You think a simple apology could save this? Keep watching. This is about more than words. Jenny shifted slightly, adjusting the suitcase handle. Her movements were purposeful. She gave him one last glance, a nod almost imperceptible, but loaded with meaning. I've tried. I've fought. I've loved. And now I have to go. Sumit staggered, speechless, trying to make sense of a reality he never wanted to confront. Each of her steps toward the door intensified the emotional tension. Every pause he took to plead, every fragment of a promise, only highlighted the finality of her choice. You think the drama ends here? Think again. The next moments are unforgettable. Her voice broke the silence again. Softer now. Almost tender. I hope you find peace, Sumit. I hope someday you can accept that love alone isn't enough when everything else is against it. That statement landed like a quiet hammer. The words weren't loud, but the emotional impact was seismic. Sumit's collapse wasn't just about losing her physically, it was watching the life he imagined unravel, because he couldn't challenge the forces controlling their world. Every micro-expression told the story. Jenny's calm, measured composure screamed strength. Sumit's trembling hands, quivering voice, and widening eyes screamed heartbreak, disbelief, and helplessness. You could almost hear the silent dialogue between their emotions, her self-preservation against his desperation. It was raw, it was human, it was painfully relatable. You think this is the end? You're about to see a turning point no one saw coming. Then the moment of action arrived. Jenny lifted her suitcase fully, ready to leave the apartment. Sumit instinctively stepped closer, nearly lunging, but she held the handle with steady hands. There was a pause, an unspoken confrontation, where every second carried the weight of years. Could he stop her? Would she falter? The tension was unbearable, and yet Jenny's resolve never wavered. Her emotional distance was mirrored in the physical space she created with the suitcase. You think he can change her mind? You'll be surprised. Sumit finally sank into a chair, defeated, clutching his head, muttering fragments of promises and regrets. Jenny took one last step, reached the door, and paused briefly. The pause wasn't hesitation, it was acknowledgement. She had loved fully, tried endlessly, and now she needed to survive. She turned the knob. The door clicked softly, a sound that felt louder than any shout. And just like that, the apartment emptied of its laughter, its arguments, its shared memories. Sumit was left crumpled, lost in shock and sorrow, a man confronting the void left by years of love and impossible circumstances. Jenny walked into the next chapter of her life, suitcase in hand, heart heavy but free. You think this breakup is simple? Watch how both hearts carry the aftermath in ways words cannot explain. The tension, the emotions, the psychological struggle, and the heartbreak are all intertwined. Jenny's decision wasn't easy, but it was necessary. Sumit's collapse wasn't weakness, it was the weight of seeing everything he held dear slip away. The scene captures not just a breakup, but the emotional cost of love under impossible circumstances. Every glance, every gesture, every word reveals behavior, psychology, and human complexity. Jenny leaves with dignity, clarity, and courage. Sumit is left to wrestle with grief, guilt, and cultural limitations he can't overcome. Their story, tragic yet real, leaves the audience questioning how love, loyalty, and family expectations collide when survival is on the line. You think she regrets it? Stay tuned. Her next move in the aftermath will shock you even more. Jenny slid into the taxi, her suitcase finally resting on the floor beside her. The door shut with a soft thud, but it sounded heavier than any clap of thunder. Sumit's face was pressed against the glass, eyes wide, trembling. His hand reached out as if the mere touch of the metal frame could stop the inevitable. The driver glanced nervously at the scene, unaware that this wasn't just another passenger, it was the end of a decade-long story. Jenny exhaled slowly, almost letting herself feel the weight of what she was doing. Every breath carried the memory of the sacrifices she had made, leaving her home, her friends, her familiar life, stepping into a world that had never fully welcomed her. Every smile she forced, every fight she swallowed, every compromise she made, it had all led to this one quiet, heart-wrenching act. And Sumit, standing outside, was the painful reminder of what love could look like when it isn't enough. You think she's just leaving? Watch the next few moments. They define heartbreak. Sumit pounded on the window softly at first, then with rising desperation. Jenny, don't do this. I can fix it. I will fix it. His voice cracked, the words spilling out faster than his brain could filter. But Jenny didn't look back. She focused on the road ahead, her mind replaying years of small rejections, subtle exclusions, and endless compromises that she had carried in silence. The silence between them was deafening. Every turn of the taxi wheels felt like a hammer striking their shared past. The street stretched between them, each meter a visual metaphor of distance, finality, and emotional collapse. Sumit ran alongside the car, his arms waving, shouting fragments of words that didn't seem enough to bridge the gap. He tried to match her pace with his desperation, but the physical and emotional distance grew with every second. If you've ever loved someone who couldn't accept your world, you know this pain. Jenny's reflection inside the cab was quiet, almost meditative. She thought of the home she had left, the dreams she had paused, and the constant weight of trying to belong in a family that never truly accepted her. Love had been real, but survival required leaving. She wasn't running from Sumit. She was running toward herself. Every street sign, every honk, every glance at her reflection in the rearview mirror was a reminder of the life she had fought to protect. The taxi moved slowly, deliberately, almost as if time itself was pausing to let the gravity sink in. Sumit kept pace as long as he could, but his energy faltered. His shirt clung to him from sweat and tears, eyes red, voice hoarse. The scene was raw, unpolished, painfully real. Jenny's composed face, almost serene, contrasted sharply with Sumit's crumpled, frantic form, a visual story of heartbreak and irreconcilable worlds. You think she's cold? Her calm is the strongest part of this heartbreak. Every object she had packed now sat quietly in the taxi, her blouse folded neatly, souvenirs from India that had once symbolized hope, gifts she had brought as bridges that were never accepted. They were more than items. They were symbols of emotional labor, sacrifice, and love that had run its course. Sumit's gaze flicked to each one, registering not just a departure, but a lifetime of missed connections and impossible expectations. Jenny reached into her bag and touched a small Ganesh statue, a gift she had hoped would symbolize unity and respect. Now, it felt like a relic of dreams that would never be realized. She exhaled again, letting herself grieve quietly. Grief wasn't loud or dramatic. It was layered, patient, and piercing. Sumit's pleading continued outside, but Jenny's emotional focus had shifted inward. Her tears were not for anger or regret. They were for recognition, for the acknowledgement that love sometimes requires walking away. And just when you think the drama is over, the real heartbreak hits. The taxi pulled into a slightly quieter street. Sumit staggered closer, finally stopping, hands dropping to his sides, exhaustion and despair overtaking him. He couldn't run anymore, couldn't shout any louder, couldn't bridge the emotional chasm that had formed. Jenny's reflection in the window showed a mixture of sorrow and resolve. She wanted him to see, if only for a moment, that leaving was not abandonment. It was self-preservation. The silence now was unbearable, filled with unspoken apologies, regrets, and what-ifs that would never be answered. Jenny's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror one last time. Sumit's shoulders sagged, his body language telling the story words couldn't. Every step he hadn't taken to confront his family's control, every compromise he hadn't challenged, had led to this. Watching him stand there, quiet, defeated, was almost more painful than the distance itself. You think this breakup is final? The aftermath is more emotional than you can imagine. Jenny finally gave herself permission to breathe fully. The road stretched out ahead of her, open, unknown, but hers to navigate. Each passing meter carried her further from heartbreak, further from compromise, and closer to reclaiming the life she had paused for love. The taxi wheels rolled on, rhythmic, relentless, echoing the heartbeat of someone finally choosing themselves over everything else. Sumit sank to the curb, exhausted, the weight of years crashing down. Every shout, every plea, every tear had met the wall of reality Jenny had built. Watching him there, the audience sees not just despair, but the long-term consequences of cultural pressure, emotional suppression, and the inability to meet someone halfway when external forces dominate. The taxi turned a corner, the sound of the engine fading. Jenny's face softened, reflective, almost tender. She knew the pain she was leaving behind, but she also knew that every sacrifice had led her to this moment of clarity. Love had been real. The heartbreak had been real. But survival required action, and action required leaving. You think the heartbreak ends here? Sumit's struggle will echo for years. As the taxi disappeared down the street, Jenny's reflection caught one last glimpse of him standing in the distance. A figure collapsed with grief, a life interrupted by impossible circumstances. The city sounds returned around her, but in the car, there was only a quiet, powerful sense of liberation. She had loved fiercely, fought relentlessly, and now she was finally free to heal. The finality was undeniable. The distance, the silence, and the rolling wheels weren't just a departure. They were a declaration. Jenny had survived, Sumit had lost, and the audience witnessed a heartbreak that was raw, unavoidable, and unforgettable. You think leaving is simple? The emotional echoes will haunt them both for years, and we'll be here to see how it unfolds. Sumit sank to the curb, his knees folding under the weight of the moment. The tears he had been holding back finally streamed freely, unchecked. His hands shook as he pressed them to his face, trying to catch breaths that refused to come steady. Every step Jenny had taken away from him echoed like a drumbeat in his chest. The collapse wasn't just physical, it was the unraveling of a life built around love, family, and unspoken compromises. He had given his all, yet it wasn't enough. Meanwhile, inside the taxi, Jenny was quiet but far from peaceful. Her hands rested on her suitcase, fingers tapping lightly, almost nervously, yet controlled. Her mind replayed every moment, the subtle dismissals, the fights she absorbed silently, the moments when she had felt invisible within Sumit's family. She had loved deeply, yes, but she had loved at a cost she could no longer afford. Each street passing by was a reminder of the life she had left behind and the courage it took to step forward. And you think this heartbreak is simple? Watch how real emotions unfold in the aftermath. Fans online immediately took notice. Social media feeds were buzzing with reaction clips, gifs of Sumit collapsing, and the moment Jenny stepped into the taxi. Comment threads debated, analyzed, and sympathized. "I can't believe she finally left," one comment read. "He looked destroyed. Poor guy," replied another. Clips showing Jenny's composed face contrasted with Sumit's devastation went viral across TikTok and Instagram. The discussions weren't just about gossip. They were about empathy, heartbreak, and the human struggle to balance love and personal well-being. Some viewers pointed out that this breakup was inevitable, given the cultural pressures and family expectations in play. Others focused on Jenny's bravery, seeing in her departure a lesson in self-respect. The conversation quickly shifted from drama to psychology. What does it take for someone to walk away from a decade of love? What drives a partner to collapse despite their devotion? These questions weren't easy to answer, and that complexity is what kept audiences glued. Sumit's breakdown illustrated a common pattern. People often equate love with endurance, believing that staying despite unhappiness proves loyalty. But Jenny's exit highlighted a counterpoint. Love without safety and respect becomes a form of self-destruction. She had loved, sacrificed, and adapted, but she never lost sight of her personal boundaries. That clarity contrasted sharply with Sumit's confusion, his inability to navigate the demands of family while meeting the needs of the person he loved most. It's fascinating how two people can care so much, yet still fail to bridge the gap between love and survival. The psychological layer here is hard to ignore. Jenny's actions show that walking away is not weakness, it's preservation. People often underestimate the courage it takes to leave a life that's familiar, even when it's toxic in subtle ways. Sumit's public breakdown reminded viewers that love is rarely enough when external pressures dominate the private world. The silent battle between emotional commitment and cultural obligation is often invisible until it explodes into a moment like this. Jenny, though appearing calm, wasn't untouched. Her mind revisited milestones, first holidays, birthdays in a new country, attempts to integrate into a family that never fully embraced her. Each memory was bittersweet, a reminder of devotion that had ultimately collided with insurmountable cultural walls. But there was also relief, a strange, quiet validation in knowing she had made a choice for herself, even if it hurt the person she loved. Social media conversations mirrored this duality. Threads debated whether Jenny had abandoned love or preserved it in its most honest form. Clips showing Sumit's face pressed against the taxi window drew empathy, while snapshots of Jenny's determined gaze inspired admiration. Commenters posed tough questions. Would you have stayed? Could you walk away if love was real, but life wasn't? The emotional engagement was high because the story was relatable. Millions have faced situations where caring wasn't enough to maintain harmony. And here's the thing: what you feel in this moment says more about human nature than any single choice in this story. Viewers could see the delicate balance of emotions. Jenny's inner strength contrasted with Sumit's outward collapse. This difference is the emotional crux. Some relationships survive external pressures. Some crumble despite the best intentions. Behavioral patterns show that love constrained by family, culture, or societal expectation often fractures even when commitment is genuine. Sumit's love was real, but he lacked the tools or courage to defy the very forces that drove Jenny away. By the end of the day, the aftermath was not just about sadness. It was about understanding boundaries, emotional investment, and self-preservation. Jenny's escape wasn't an escape from love, but from a context where love couldn't thrive. Sumit's breakdown wasn't weakness, but the human response to losing someone while feeling powerless to act differently. Both narratives held truth. Both demanded empathy. And both left audiences reflecting on their own relationships. You think you know who's hurting more? Watch as the emotional consequences unfold in ways you won't see coming. The unresolved tension lingered. Would Sumit ever challenge his family's influence? Could Jenny find a place where love didn't require sacrificing self-worth? The episode ended with questions that weren't meant to be answered immediately, leaving viewers in suspense and primed for the next installment. The story wasn't over. It had evolved. Heartbreak had happened, but growth, confrontation, and perhaps reconciliation were still possible in the future. Fans speculated about future episodes. Would Sumit finally stand up for himself, or would he continue to let familial and cultural pressures dictate his choices? Would Jenny build a life that fulfilled her, free from compromise, or would the emotional cost follow her? These questions drove comment sections and fan communities, keeping the audience engaged long after the broadcast ended. Next episode might reveal who truly changes and who just survives the drama. Jenny's journey reminds viewers that love is not always about staying together. It's about making choices that honor your own boundaries, even when those choices hurt deeply. Sumit's collapse reminds us that devotion alone cannot fix systemic or cultural conflicts. Together, these moments show the tension between attachment and autonomy, a universal struggle made intensely personal by their story. The emotional aftermath was messy, painful, and raw. Jenny had claimed agency over her life, Sumit had confronted the depth of his attachment, and viewers had been offered an intimate look at heartbreak in real time. The story lingered in minds, sparking debate, empathy, and reflection. The drama was over, but the lessons and emotions were far from finished. This wasn't just a breakup. It was a lesson in courage, emotional intelligence, and the sometimes painful price of love under pressure. The screen had shown heartbreak, the internet amplified the reactions, and the human stories continued to ripple outward. Viewers were left wondering, discussing, and, importantly, reflecting. What would they do if love demanded leaving or staying? By now, the weight of the story has settled like a stone in your chest. Jenny's departure isn't just a scene. It's a culmination of years of sacrifice, quiet endurance, and emotional labor that most of us can only imagine. Leaving India meant leaving a life she had tried to build from scratch. Her friends, routines, and a sense of home she fought to create in a world that never fully embraced her. Every item in her suitcase was more than clothes or souvenirs. They were memories, reminders of love given, love stretched, and love that ultimately couldn't survive the pressure around it. Sumit's collapse shows a different kind of truth. His tears weren't theatrical. They were the tangible weight of someone caught between family expectations and personal devotion. Watching him struggle to reconcile love for Jenny with loyalty to his family struck a chord with viewers. You could almost feel his chest tighten, his words choking in his throat, each plea a mix of desperation and disbelief. The scene reminded us that heartbreak isn't always dramatic gestures or shouting matches. Sometimes it's quiet, raw, and unbearably human. And believe me, what happens next could make you question every choice in this story. The emotional arc here is both simple and layered. Jenny's courage shines, but it's steeped in tragedy. She isn't leaving because she stopped caring. She's leaving because caring alone isn't enough when a world of cultural and familial pressure closes in. The bravery lies in choosing self-preservation over remaining in a situation that erodes identity and peace of mind. Sumit's heartbreak contrasts with her clarity, illustrating a painful truth. Love is rarely the only thing at stake in relationships that cross cultural lines. Fans continue to debate online. Threads are filled with empathy for both sides. Many admire Jenny's bravery, recognizing the mental and emotional toll of her journey. Others sympathize with Sumit, understanding the conflict of wanting to honor family while facing the collapse of a relationship he deeply cherished. The discussions aren't just entertainment, they're a reflection of universal struggles, loyalty, self-worth, and the difficult choices love forces us to confront. Jenny's story also holds a subtle empowerment message. It shows that stepping away doesn't erase love, it reframes it. Sometimes, the kindest act toward yourself is to choose freedom over compromise. The image of her settling into the taxi, suitcase beside her, calm yet resolute, lingers long after the episode ends. That small, quiet act carries more weight than 1,000 arguments or tearful confrontations. And if you think this is just a breakup, wait until you see how family dynamics continue to unfold. It's far from over. Sumit's journey, on the other hand, offers insight into human behavior under pressure. Devotion alone cannot solve structural or cultural barriers. His collapse illustrates the limits of love when external expectations dominate. Watching him stagger through grief, replaying words he wished he'd said differently, shows that even the strongest intentions sometimes falter under invisible forces. It's heartbreaking. And it's real. Viewers are left with layered emotions, sadness for the loss, admiration for Jenny's courage, empathy for Sumit's struggle, and curiosity for what comes next. Every element of this story, the sacrifice, the miscommunication, the cultural friction, the finality, feeds into a tension that refuses to resolve neatly. And that's why this episode resonates. We're not just watching a breakup, we're witnessing human behavior, cultural pressures, and the painful calculus of love versus self-preservation. And here's where it gets even more intriguing. What seems like an ending may just be the start of new conflicts, revelations, or unexpected reconciliations. The fans' reactions online underscore this. People are predicting future fallout. Will Sumit confront his family about their influence? Will Jenny find peace and stability in a new environment? Could there be a reconciliation? Or will both of them chart separate paths entirely? These questions keep the audience invested, ensuring that the story extends beyond the 45-minute episode and into ongoing conversations across social media. Jenny's departure also offers viewers a reflective moment. Many have experienced relationships where love isn't enough to overcome external stressors. Watching someone navigate that line between commitment and self-care encourages empathy and introspection. It asks the audience, how far would you go before choosing yourself? Would you stay for love or leave for survival? These questions linger, deepening the emotional engagement long after the screen goes dark. And don't forget, the cultural clash here isn't just background, it's central. It amplifies every choice, every sacrifice, every tear shed in this story. The story also highlights how grief manifests differently. Jenny carries hers quietly, in controlled steps and reflective moments, while Sumit's erupts in public, raw, and uncontained. Both responses are valid and human. Together, they paint a complex picture of heartbreak, one that resonates because it feels authentic. Audiences can see pieces of themselves in both characters, whether in the quiet pain of walking away or the desperate struggle of holding on. As the episode closes, the tension remains unresolved. Jenny has taken a step toward autonomy, Sumit remains in the wake of emotional collapse, and viewers are left anticipating the next moves, the potential fallout, and the social and familial consequences that follow. It's a story without neat closure, But that's exactly what makes it compelling. And if you think you've seen the drama peak, you haven't, the next chapter might flip everything you thought you knew about loyalty, love, and family allegiance. Ultimately, this story is about choices and consequences. Jenny leaving is both heartbreaking and empowering, a reminder that self-respect is sometimes the highest form of love. Sumit's heartbreak is equally unforgettable, showing the human cost of divided loyalty. Together, their story leaves an emotional imprint, offering a window into real, complicated relationships where love is necessary but not sufficient. And believe me, what happens next could make you question every choice in this story. This leaves viewers with one final thought. Life doesn't pause for heartbreak, and love isn't always enough to hold it together. But resilience, courage, and self-awareness can create new paths, even from the ashes of emotional collapse. As we wait for the next chapter, the story continues to ripple through audiences, sparking debate, reflection, and anticipation for the drama that is far from over. Jenny and Sumit's story may have reached a turning point, but it isn't finished. Every glance, every message, every family conversation that follows will carry the weight of what happened. And for viewers, that tension is irresistible. The promise that next time the stakes could be higher, the emotions more intense, and the decisions even more consequential.